Welcome, everyone. We are so glad to have you here with us today. My name is Lisa Lunghofer. I'm the Executive Director of the Gray Muzzle organization, and I'm joined by my colleagues Amanda Grant, give a wave Amanda, and Laura Merrick. We will be fielding your questions, and we are delighted to have Denise Fleck here with us today presenting. So before I introduce Denise, like I said, we will hopefully have some time for questions at the end and perhaps some throughout the presentation. So please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box and we will try to field them. And if for some reason we don't get to your question or something comes up after we go offline today, please feel free to reach out to us. And we have a special in with Denise, so we'll try to get your question answered. All right, so with that, we are delighted to have Denise here with us today. She is an award-winning author and animal care instructor who developed the curriculum for her pet first aid and CPR and pet disaster preparedness classes after training with dozens of schools and organizations, practicing, attending seminars, and practicing some more. She is known as the Pet Safety Crusader. She has personally taught more than 30,000 humans life-saving skills and has appeared on Animal Planet's Groomer, Has It, and Pit Boss, A&E's Kirstie Alley's Big Life, CBS TV's The Doctors, CNN Headline News, PBS TV's Lassie's Pet Vet, and KTLA Los Angeles, as well as on radio and in magazines. She is president of the Gray Muzzle Board of Directors, and she has a soft spot for senior dogs. She is also a dear friend of mine and just a wonderful human being, and we could not be happier to have you here presenting today, Denise. So with that, I will turn the virtual floor over to you, and we're really excited to listen to all that you have to share today.
Well, thank you, Lisa, Amanda, Laura, and everybody that's tuning in. I'm excited to be here. There may be moments today where you don't see my head, but that's okay as long as you can hear me, because I'm going to be focusing on my buddy here. Now, this isn't a class, but I just do always want to emphasize that I'm going to give you some really good tips today. But veterinarians are the experts, and they have the ability to see your pet, know your pet's medical history and the whole bit. But they generally aren't, Velcroed to our hip 24/7. So when something's going wrong with our pet, we want to know what to do even before we can get to veterinary care, or to find problems early and have them addressed with the vet. But of course, your veterinarian is always your best resource to see your pet, because they can physically examine them, like I said, know the medical history, and are able to prescribe treatment. With that said, what we're going to be talking about today is doing a head to tail checkup, as well as checking vitals on our pets so that we know what is normal for them. When do you want to start doing that? Today. Absolutely today, start doing it. Your senior dogs really need you to catch problems early so that they can spend more time with you, but go at a speed that's comfortable for them. Some animals that haven't had a lot of human touch may not like their ears messed with or their paws touched. So go slowly. You don't have to do the whole head to tail in one day, but over time, hopefully you'll work up to it and it'll be a great bonding experience. Additionally, what I always like to say is before you do anything with your pets, be in a good spot yourself. Don't have just gotten off a phone call that's made you angry or need to dash out the door in 5 minutes. Pets are so perceptive to our emotions, they pick up on our energy. So it's important we're calm and that we're just really in the moment like they are with us as we devote this time to them. This is my princess, Kiko, and she has been with us for 1 year and 4 months. She's somewhere between 8 and 10 years old, and every day she seems to blossom a little more. She actually is starting to really love her head to tail checkup. She likes to do it for 5 or 10 minutes. So that's why I'm going to have my stuffed friend here to demonstrate most of the techniques today. And this is one of the few stuffed friends that she hasn't acquired. You see, some of my CPR dogs and cats have become her toys. So let's first talk about vitals. Respiration is just like for us when we take oxygen in the lungs and exhale it. So there's a visible movement to the chest. It's best to just be like stealth with our senior dogs, watching their chest rise and fall. One inhalation and one exhalation equals one breath. Don't count that as two. A lot of people ask, can I put my hand in front of the dog's mouth and count how many times he exhales? Well, in theory you can, but you know our canine pals, when they see a hand coming, they think there's probably a treat in it. They get excited, start to pant, and you've blown the count. So it's best to just observe or place your hand here on the side of the chest and count that rise and fall. Our large dogs breathe 10 to 30 breaths per minute, and our smaller friends, 20 to 40 breaths per minute. What's important to note about this, though, is those are a range. Some dogs that are large breathe 10, some might breathe 28 to 30. So it's important for you to find out what is normal for your senior dog. In the upper right-hand corner there, I have my older pal, Mr. Rico, and he's always there to remind me that if any of you have puppies, those puppies are young and they're small. But as they grow, they get bigger and larger. So over time, both respiration and pulse, which we're going to get to next, slow down. So if any of you have taken your respiration on your dogs in previous years, now that they're in their golden years, those numbers will be slower. But it's important you know where in that range they lie. Next up is pulse. And that's literally the rhythmic movement of blood through an artery. The heart beats and then the blood pulses through those arteries. On us humans, we typically check it at the carotid or at the wrist. The best place on our canine pals is at the femoral artery. Think of the big femur bone in the thigh, put 2 fingers at the knee and roll it into the groin. That's where you're going to feel the pulse. You don't want to use your thumb. It has its own heart rate to it, but any of your middle fingers, check on yourself which ones are most sensitive. Often our index fingers used for so much, it might even have like a callus and may be hard to detect. But again, you see for our large dogs, they're 65 to 90 beats per minute. Smaller dogs, 90 to 160. So if you're a little dog, even if he's a senior and if he's been running around the room, that's going to be a high number and you're going to have to pay really good attention to actually count it. But again, do note that as our pets get older, these numbers do slow down, but we want to know what they are. Temperature, probably the dog's least favorite one for us to check, but that again is a measure of body heat. And if your senior pup is ever 98.6 like you should be, he's in a whole heap of a lot of trouble. You see on the slide there, on average, dogs should be 101 degrees Fahrenheit. I've got the centigrade there for our above the border and south of the border friends, but 101 degrees. The range of normal range is 100.4 to 102.5. So again, our senior dogs are unique individuals. Every one of them might be slightly different, like some of us are a little below 98.6 or a little above. So find out what's normal for your pet. You'll see in the middle of the screen, there's an ear thermometer. Those need to be pet specific, and I'm going to be talking about the ears more shortly, but dogs have more L-shaped ear canals than we do. So you do need to get the pet specific ear thermometer if you're going to test it that way. Just know all pets don't like their ears messed with, so it isn't always easier. A lot of us think that's less invasive than under the tail here, but not always. Over on the right-hand side, you see the infrared thermometer. And what's nice about that is it doesn't have to enter anything. You can actually hold it 2 inches from the ear or 2 inches from that inner thigh where I just showed you on the femoral artery. My problem with that is every time I personally have had my temperature tested lately with an infrared, I come in at 93.4. So I don't think they're super accurate. So really over there on the left, the old fashioned way under the tail is the best to do. And I just knocked the thermometer on the floor, so let me grab it. Because what I want you to see with this is you can just get the human type, just a digital thermometer. And right here at the silver tip, that's where we get the temperature, not down here, meaning we only want to enter under the tail 1/2 inch to 1 inch. But you notice I took a Sharpie and drew a black line right at the 1 inch mark. I don't ever want that to disappear. The danger of going in too deeply is that you can actually perforate the valve. So what we want to do is use some sort of lubrication, KY jelly, Vaseline, something preferably water soluble. At the very least, dampen the tip of the thermometer so it'll glide easily. Then we're going to lift the tail to prevent the pet from sitting down. Hopefully we have somebody at the other end, the happy end, distracting them maybe with treats or a lick mat or something along those lines. And then we're going to insert at about a 45-degree angle, and we do not want to see that black line disappear. Really, really important. Once you've done that, hopefully you have determined your pet's temperature. Now, with all of these vitals, what I suggest is go ahead right away, start today, but don't necessarily write them down as the gospel today. If this is the first time you've ever done any of these techniques with your pet, he might be a little concerned about what's going on, might get a little anxious, numbers might not be normal. So over the next week or two, take up 3 or 4 times, and then find the median or the average range and record those as your baselines. If you have senior dogs, it's not at all a bad idea to redo this every 4 to 6 months, because things do change as they age, and because our dogs, their life is accelerated from birth. You know, they don't live as long as we do. So, you know, even a few months can be like a year for us. Next on the vitals is hydration. And just like the planet Earth, our senior dogs should be 70% water. So the easiest way to check that is what's called the Tuger test. And what you basically do, I know you probably can't see too well on my stuff friend here, but you gently lift a little bit of skin here at the base of the neck. And then when you release it, it should fall back in place. That shows the skin is well hydrated. However, because what we don't want to see is, like you see on my little rodent friend there on the slide, where the skin's staying stick together in that tent. But senior pets, like senior people, often lose a little elasticity in their skin. So sometimes it can stay in that upright position a little longer and fool you. And then again, we have breeds like Bassets and Sharpeys and others that have loose skin. So what I prefer to do is, once I've gotten my pet accustomed to my hands in his mouth, I very gently lift his lip on the side and just rub the gum. If it's sloppy wet, he's good to go. But if it's dry or sticky, we need to encourage our pets to drink or maybe spray a little water in their mouth. We can even put something enticing in the water, like a little non-sodium chicken broth, tuna juice, whatever it might be, just to encourage drinking. But water is so important. Every system of our senior dog's body needs water to function properly. So do encourage water drinking. Never force water down their throat, because you can have them aspirated into their lungs, but always have that fresh water bowl available and encourage pets to drink. Next is capillary refill time. And this is the one that's probably the least familiar to most of us, but it's what checks circulation, how well the blood is perfused throughout the body. It's a layperson's way of doing that. The way we would do it on us is pressing down on our nail bed. Capillaries are the smallest vessels in our body carrying blood and oxygen, and they're, you know, at the extremities, at connective tissues, and so on. So if I'm pressing on my thumbnail here for a moment in time, I'm diminishing the blood flow through those capillaries. But if I have a good, healthy circulatory system, the minute I release that pressure, the pink color should come back under my nail. Everything should start flowing again. So that's what we're just checking. On our pets, however, pressing on their nail beds doesn't do much good. So what we want to do is very carefully, again, come over here to the sharp end, as I like to call it, lift the lip, and with our thumb or index finger, but the fleshy part, ladies with long nails, be careful, just the fleshy part, press on the gum right above the teeth until you turn it white or lighten it. And when you release that color, you want to see that good bubblegum pink come back in 2 seconds or less. So you might ask, well, I've got a picture of a dark gum doggy there. Well, that was my precious, precious haiku. I called him a Chiquita. He was part Chow and part Akita. And yes, he had dark pigment. Very often dogs that have dark pigment that will have dark pigment on their nose and maybe even eyeliner. So what you can do ever so gently, you can still test this way by pressing on the gums, because by doing so, you're going to blanch out the color. And then when you release, hopefully the color it was comes back. But what you ever so gently want to do is go to their lower eyelid and just turn it inside out a little bit. If there's good pink there, you're good to go. Another less invasive thing you might try is look at your senior dog when you know he's healthy and check the inner flaps of his ears. All pets don't have super pink inner flaps. It just depends how close to the surface the capillaries are and pigmenting and other things. But if you normally can notice a good pink color there, that's an alternate place to check capillary refill time. This is so important because a slow capillary refill time can result in shock. That's when a pet isn't getting sufficient blood and oxygen to all parts of the body, and this is life-threatening. And what we want to do just so quickly as we transport him to the hospital, because that's what's needed, is slightly elevate the hindquarters, have the back end on your lap or on a folded up towel or a small pillow, and then cover them with a sheet or a blanket. Because if they aren't circulating blood, it's like their thermostat isn't working, and we want to keep them warm and get them quickly to veterinary care. But just one more thing about the gums. Some people say the eyes are the windows to a person's soul. I like to say that the gum color is a window to your dog's health. Pink is what we normally want to see unless they are dark pigmented. I'm having trouble with that word today. Dark pigmented gums. Red would be hyperthermia, meaning their body temperature is too high. They might possibly be suffering from heat stroke. If you see anything blue-gray, like the second picture there, the pet isn't getting enough oxygen or may not be breathing at all. And if they're pale, or if the capillary refill time is too slow, it's 2 seconds or longer, that pet could be, from a picture, we can't tell like this, but that pet could be anemic, could have suffered loss of blood, or could be in cardiac arrest. And then there's yellow. And that's actually what we call jaundice, which is typically a problem with the liver. But with our canine pals, there are a couple other things that can cause that. Licking SPF off of us, or anything that contains zinc. If there happens to be a newborn in the house, a human, and you have diaper rash ointment and drop it on the floor and the dog runs off with it and gets canine tooth through the tube, he could get zinc toxicity. But the biggest culprit of this for our dogs is swallowing pennies. Why do they swallow pennies? That's the million-dollar question. But beginning in 1983, the United States started making pennies that were zinc discs dipped in copper. And those pennies sit in the belly, and the caustic acid starts to break down the zinc. Your dog will have breathing difficulties and vomit, and you will see that yellow in the gums, in the nose, in the whites of the eyes, the inner flaps of the ears, and your pet is in serious trouble. So, keeping a tidy house can also help keep your pets safe. And the last thing I want to talk about with vitals is body weight and condition. Now, body weight is a number, and of course, we need to keep our pets all at a good, healthy weight. We do need to remember, especially as our pets get into their senior years, that love isn't always an extra treat. Love can be a belly rub or time spent with you. Senior dogs actually do a little bit better if they're a little underweight rather than overweight. So not extremely underweight, but we just don't want to have too much weight on them. But it's so important that we know what that number is should we have to give our pets any medication. Our vets are going to always prescribe according to our pet's body weight, but it's your responsibility as your senior pet's advocate to pay attention, because sometimes certain medications might cause the pet to have increased thirst and appetite. So they might eat more, and they might actually gain a few pounds during the course of that medicine, and maybe the prescription will need to be altered. Whereas other medications sometimes may make the pet sick and he's not eating and can lose weight. If we're talking about, a hearty, healthy, good-sized dog like this, a few pounds won't make a difference. But those of you with smaller senior dogs need to remember that, you know, a 3-pound Chihuahua written down as 5 pounds, that's almost double that pet's body weight. So even, you know, 1/4 and 1/2 pounds can make a significant difference in a smaller pet. The other side of the slide talks about body condition, and that's the way you just check them without having that scale. What you want to see when you look at your doggie from above is that there's a little definition. I won't say an hourglass, but just a little definition to the waistline. When you look from the side, the tummy's tucked up higher, the chest is what's hanging lower. Now, I know in our older best friends, sometimes this levels out because they lose muscle tone, but we just want to make sure there isn't a great big old beer belly on Fido. And then finally, when we're hugging on them and loving on them, we want to know the ribs are there. We don't want to be able to feel every individual one, but we want to know underneath the coat that the ribs are there, that there isn't too much of a fat layer. There are very few dogs that you should actually see a hint of rib, and those would be our leaner breeds, typically our sight hounds, our greyhounds, our whippets, our Rhodesian Ridgebacks, and so on. So just keep that in mind, as that's also a way to check weight without having the scale. So in addition to checking vitals, it's really important to really get to know our senior dog from snout to tail. I often say from wag to woof, but whatever you want to call it, I want you to get acquainted with your bodies. I know anybody listening to this webinar loves their senior dog. They hug on their senior dog, they brush their senior dog, but I want you to learn all of the idiosyncrasies about your pet. It serves 2 points there you see at the bottom. It's a preventive. If you find that little lump when it's, you know, the size of your fingernail, your dog is going to have a better prognosis from getting that tumor or whatever it happens to be removed than if you wait, you know, another 9 months when it's time for your dog's annual checkup and the vet finds it and now it's the size of a golf ball. Also, anytime something isn't quite right with your pet, it's a good idea to do an assessment because you may find out it's not what you thought. He may be limping and you think he's got stones between his toes or a cut paw, but on further inspection, you might find there's some problems with the hip, or maybe he's sat on a bee and there's a sting somewhere. So before I dive into the head to tail, I see there are some questions coming up. Amanda, was there anything pertaining to the vitals that I should answer at this point, or should I keep on going?
There was one about how to avoid aspiration but still keep your senior dog hydrated. Deb says she uses a dropper, but she's not sure what is the ideal liquid volume.
Okay, well, on average, thank you for that question. On average, large dogs need to drink close to 1 gallon a day, where our smaller friends about 1/2 gallon. Obviously not all at once, that's throughout the day. But one of the things you can consider rather than just plain water is giving them a moister meal. You know, talk with your veterinarian or your pet nutritionist about what that may be, but rather than just a drier kibble, add some wet food to it. That's a great way to add in water. You might also, when it's summertime, think of some frozen treats. They can be things like yogurt and peanut butter blended with water, or certain fruits that your pet might go for. But otherwise, yes, actually, a dropper is great. What I typically use, if I can step out of frame, here's my pet first aid kit, is a needleless syringe with a curved tip. That looks like this. That's a good way to get water into a pet. Or you can have a spray bottle, but please, please, please don't use your old Windex bottle. Get, you know, a fresh, clean, never been used bottle. And that's something you can spray in their mouth to hydrate them and also mist them. All right. Yes.
One other question that pertains to the beginning of your webinar. Nicole is hoping you can clarify the difference between a small dog and a large dog. She's asking specifically, would a 50-pound dog be considered large or small? I know it can vary, so wondering how to categorize.
Oh, it's an excellent question. And, you know, that's one of those things that everybody has their own opinion about. Having been raised by a Great Dane, I, you know, don't even consider pit bulls or German shepherds that large. But, you know, to give you some parameters, typically under 25 pounds is small. under 50 pounds is medium, and above that is large. Now, I know for the most part, I kind of told you medium and large dogs as a range. So what you have to remember is, you know, each of our dogs doesn't know which column he's supposed to fit into. So I'm giving you basic ideas here with the ranges for respiration and pulse, but you need to find out what that number is that seems normal to your pet. And, you know, do talk with your veterinarian. If something isn't clear, if you can't actually find that pulse, next time you go in for a vet visit, make sure the vet tech or your veterinarian helps you, you know, feel for it so that you really know where it is. There is a depression in there in the inner thigh, kind of in the groin where most people can find it. But it is, again, a unique individual thing. It's crazy, but in the human world, it's very different. My husband's pulse is over 100. Mine's at 54 most of the time. And somehow we get along. So, you know, it does vary from pet to pet, but I would say small is typically under 25 pounds. So when we start our head to tail, obviously you can start in the middle and work to both ends, but I'm going to start at the head today. And the first thing I want to do in the ears is sniff. Ears should not smell bad. It's important for us to keep them clean in between groomings. They get dirt and debris and wax, but like I alluded to earlier, dogs have a much more L-shaped ear canal than we do. Depending on which way you're looking at your pup, when you look down the ear canal, it turns right or left. So to keep it clean, what I like to do is use my ear wash, but I put it on a square of gauze and soak that well, rather than putting the ear wash down the ear. Now, I know most of the products say to do that. Your vet may even do that. He may then squish around the ear and then try to get the pet to shake. But my thinking is if you've got an L-shaped ear canal and you're flushing liquid down, any dirt and debris here is now settling on the eardrum. And we're hoping when the pet shakes, it's all going to come out. But, you know, there are no guarantees. And by getting liquid in the ears, even if it is ear wash, it may not always evaporate and could turn into a yeast or a fungal infection. So by moistening a cloth and only going about one knuckle, depending on the size of the pet, down, and keeping that outer area clean, you're going to overall keep the whole ear canal clean. Now, you know, you may need that professional cleaning at your vet first to know everything's clean as a whistle, as they say. But if you do this regularly, hopefully there won't be the debris down the ears. If you have a downward ear dog, this always is counterintuitive to me because I think that covers everything up. But no, downward ear dogs are more prone to ear infections. It holds in the moisture and the dirt. So I would absolutely check their ears weekly. If you have an upright ear dog, I would still check at his ears weekly, but you may only have to clean them every 3 to 4 weeks because there is a better airflow. So keep them clean. And if you have one of the little fuzzy breeds, a cocker, a Bichon Frise, a poodle, you may need help from your veterinarian or groomer getting some of that hair out just so it doesn't wad up like a cotton ball and your pet can't hear, or so that it doesn't collect dirt and parasites. Again, we don't want a foul smell. We don't ever want anything to look red or infected. Or when we look down there, we don't want to see anything that looks like coffee grounds. That would be the dirt left behind by ear mites. If anything smells bad or looks bad, don't start cleaning in there yourself. Most of us humans don't remember this because we tend to have ear infections when we're kids. They're painful. So the last thing your dog is going to want you to do is going, you know, digging around in there. Let a professional do it, possibly with your pet sedated, but keep those ears clean. Next is the eyes, and I'm going to come around here in the front of my friend here for a couple reasons. Let me just move this. One, what we want to do weekly is what we call a tracking test. And you really want to be face to face to your dog to do this. Hold up a finger and move it back and forth a couple of times. What you're trying to see is that his eyes smoothly follow the finger, that there are no erratic motions, that the eyes are darting about. Anytime eyes are erratic like that, that could signal a head injury or certain types of poisoning. Antifreeze ingestion is one of them. The other thing you want to look for in the eyes is that they react to light and that they're the same size. Reacting to light means, in a bright room, the pupils are going to dilate or get small, are going to get small or contract. When you play peekaboo and cover them, they should get larger or dilate, but they need to be the same size in relation to each other. You see this little Weimaraner here, his pupils are very unequally dilated. He had actually cracked skulls with another dog playing, roughhousing, and it hit a nerve. Good thing for this little guy, he was only like 4 months and had a soft skull, that the nerve went back to normal after a few months and the inflammation. Kiko is going to speak up after all. But sometimes, especially if that stays for, several minutes or longer, you want to have your pet seen by a specialist because that could indicate the sign of a head injury. Also, I don't think you can see, I think our videos are kind of covering a little bit of the right of the slide. So if anybody wants like a PDF or something or has questions after, please don't hesitate to ask. But that's showing that the pug, again, it was one roughhousing with his friends. And in this case, instead of a dilated pupil, what happened is he got what's called proptosis, where the eye kind of bulged out. So in that case, you would want to cover that with a saline-coated pad and get him to the vet. But on a normal basis, our dogs can get something in their eye just like we do. So you want to get out eye wash out of your pet first aid kit. And to be honest with you, the only ingredient in it should be purified water. If you don't have that, bottled water you haven't sucked on yet, or saline solution. And you open it up, lift the upper eye, and flush from the outer corners so that the fluid, dirt, and debris runs down the muzzle. Let him blink it out and flush again. If your pup is still pawing at it, take him into the bright sun. Have him on leash, but if he closes that eye in the bright light source, just that one eye, most likely something's embedded or scratched, and you want to get him quickly to the vet. One of the biggest culprits of them scratching their eyes is their own nails, but it can be toys or sticks or bushes in the yard as well. As you continue your head to tail checkup, you want to go down the muzzle. And this is why it's so important you get your pets used to the human touch. Some pets will never let you touch them, so you're never going to know if something's sore. But if this dog always lets me touch, but today he's pulling away or actually showing a little lip here, I know something's sore and I need to have it further addressed by my veterinarian. So feel for any lumps or bumps. Particularly in the snout with all the bone and cartilage, you may not see, bumps or lumps, so you need to feel for them. As far as the tip of the nose, it should be a happy medium. It should never be so dry that it's cracked or so wet that it's constantly dripping, and shouldn't have an unusually colored discharge, meaning something green, yellow, or red. As you're doing the whole head to tail checkup, just always watch for facial expressions. Sometimes you're going to hit a good spot and that back leg's going to go. But other times you may hit something tender, and again, you might see a little lip pull up and a tooth show. So be really tuned in and pay attention to your pet while you're doing this. Be in the moment. It's all about the two of you together, and it can be a great bonding time. Do realize, however, though, when there is soreness here, it may have nothing to do with the nasal passages. It may actually be coming from the mouth. And February is National Pet Mental Health Month, and I've been talking about it on my blog all month about how important it is for us to brush our pets' teeth. Now, I know a lot of people aren't going to do it, but it really is one of the greatest things you can do for your senior dog. Find a toothpaste he likes, and when I say toothpaste, I mean pet specific. Do not use human toothpaste. It contains detergent. We spit, they will not, they will swallow it. Also, human toothpaste contain fluoride, which can cause GI problems in our dogs. And they often contain lauryl sodium sulfate, which can cause tummy problems, as well as xylitol. Xylitol is a huge no-no for our dogs. It was intended for humans with diabetes because it keeps that sugar at a more even keel, but dogs ingesting xylitol, it can plummet their glucose very quickly, send them into a coma, and long-term cause liver problems. They're tricky. It isn't always labeled xylitol. Sometimes it's labeled birch sugar, birch bark extract, or sugar alcohols. So just beware of any of those things. But that's why you want a pet-specific toothpaste, and just let him taste it. let him know that it's a tasty thing. You don't want him chewing on your fingers, but just let him get used to that first. And then the mouth doesn't even have to be open. The mouth can be closed, and you're going to lift the lip and 30 seconds around to the front on this side, 30 seconds around to the front. Hold down the lower jaw, 30 seconds, and you're done. If you're having a great time and you want to get in on the inside of the teeth, terrific. But dogs' tongues are more caustic, as is their saliva, and they don't seem to collect the tartar on the inside as much as we do. It seems to be back here, the molars and the premolars, because the fleas, the lips, hold that food there close, and also on our little pets, these front teeth. I will tell you that I have known a number of senior dogs that have needed to have a great amount of extractions, and people are like, no, I'm not going to put him through that. Get the details from your veterinarian, but typically what you should do ahead of time is get a CBC, a complete blood count. If your pet's liver and kidneys have good values, if they're working well, that means they will be able to flush the anesthesia out of their system. Also, you all want to know that their heart is good too. But if you have a veterinarian you trust and, the pet meets that criteria, it might be one of the best things you can do for your pet. Sure, there'll be a little recovery time, but afterwards, I've seen many senior dogs feel like puppies because their mouth doesn't hurt. A toothache can make anyone grouchy. And when you have a mouthful of bad teeth, it can be really, uncomfortable, and it can affect the whole body. Because what happens in smallest terms here, the food, the saliva, and the bacteria in the mouth forms plaque. You basically have 48 hours to get that plaque off the teeth before it turns to tartar. Tartar are those brownish yellow stains in the left-hand picture. I try not to put things in that are really disgusting, but you can go online and find some bad ones. But you can see there's a little tartar there, the gums are inflamed. But after a dental cleaning, we've got pretty much pearly whites on this older dog. So it's just really important, because as that gum lifts away from the tooth, any bacteria in the mouth now can get into the bloodstream and travel to the brains, the heart valves, the kidneys, the liver, and so on. So by keeping your senior dog's mouth clean, you're overall keeping him more healthy. And that's one of the things a lot of our grantees really put their applications in for a gray muzzle grant, is to do dentals. Getting a dog's teeth cleaned and problems fixed just makes them so much more adoptable. And then once they're in our homes, it makes them more kissable, but also more healthy, so that hopefully they can spend more time by our sides. The rest of the head to tail checkup is going to be like an all-over doggy massage without you really being trained. And maybe this is a good time again for me to stop and ask Amanda if there was anything, questions pertaining to what I just covered.
Let's see.
If not, we can pick up at the end, but I just thought I would, before I got too far.
Somebody asked what the best toothbrush to use would be, and also what you think of dental chews.
Okay, terrific. I don't really want to give out a brand. If you go to my blog, I have reviewed some, but it's kind of a personal preference and what works for your pet. I would get a dog specific one. If you use a human one, make sure it's a soft one, and probably kid size. But there are many out there these days that actually have 3 or 4 sides to them that can go around both sides, the bottom and the upper part of the tooth, and then get the tooth below it at the same time. So if that's something that's feeling good in your hand and working with your pet, you might want to try that. But just make sure it's always a pet specific toothpaste. And yes, in between brushings, I think you should do other things. Having toys that your pets chew on, but just always remember there's no such thing as an indestructible toy. There is a dog out there somewhere that's going to break pieces off of it, cut his gums, swallow them, or so on. There are all kinds of dental chews. Again, I can refer you to some on my website, but what I just tell you to do is read the labels. You want to make sure not only do they have good ingredients, but that they're highly digestible. There are some of these, and the point of the dental chew is to mechanically break some of the tartar off. but sometimes it's then swallowed in chunks, the chew. And if they don't digest well, especially in, smaller systems, they can cause intestinal blockages. So you just want to, read the reviews and check up on those things. Most of the dental chews probably aren't meaty, and that's a tough task for my Akita Kiko. She is all about meat. She will eat eggs and cheese, but don't give her a dog cookie that's flour-based. Don't even give her peanut butter, oddly. But I did find a chew that is abrasive enough for her that she likes. It also breaks down the biofilm that starts to form the plaque, and it has parsley and spearmint in it, which freshens her breath. So that's a great thing. When we adopted her a year and a half ago, not quite, she came to us with a broken molar. And from the dental records we got from the shelter, that had actually occurred 2 years prior. When we got her in the car, we could smell it. And, my heart just ached that she had been dealing with that all of this time. So we immediately had our veterinarian take a look and remove that tooth. And the veterinarian was amazed at the amount of pus underneath it. But once it healed, Kiko is crunching away on her food and having a good time. So it really can make a difference. And we were lucky with her, it was only one. Many dogs have many. But like I said, that's one of the prime things Gray Muzzle does do is give grants for dentals, and it does make pets more adoptable, because then the potential adopters realize that the dog is on a healthier path. And of course, other things are going to always crop up. But if that's one thing they can check off the list, it's a good thing. Okay, then, so as we continue, and I said the rest of the head to tail is like an all-over doggy massage. What we're going to do is just tune in, use our eyes, use our fingers, use our noses, and feel the chest, looking for lumps and bumps. Go down each shoulder, especially to a senior dog. Don't do a deep shiatsu or any type of massage on them, but a gentle massage to the shoulders can feel like heaven, because very often when they start losing strength in their hindquarters, they're putting more weight on their front shoulders, and those front shoulders become sore. So a gentle massage is nice. Go down each leg, feeling for lumps and bumps, noticing the condition of the coat. Obviously, like in the picture here with me and my buddy Haiku, it's always good if you're laying down. I like being on the back side of the pet and just having him comfortable and chill. I'm just trying to use my stuffed friend here so you guys can better see him today, but be in a position that's comfortable for you and the pet. And continue to feel. Notice the condition of the coat. Is it a nice shiny coat? Is a lot of hair coming out, or just a normal amount? Is the skin at all flaky? All of those, are conditions of health. We often forget, even on us humans, that the skin is the largest organ of the body. So if, something isn't right in the body, it's going to present itself in the skin. You may even want to do this when you're bathing your pet, because when their coat is wet, you can actually see the skin a whole lot better. That's why I always consider groomers part of your pet's health and safety team, because they get down to the skin even more so than your veterinarian on a normal basis, and can see if there's rashes or cuts or parasites or anything there. All the time while you're feeling, watch the face. Again, you might hit a good spot, or you might need to hit a tender one that needs further addressing. Don't forget the pads of the feet. Obviously, make sure the nails are nicely trimmed, that there are no cuts or tears to the pads, and check between the toes, not only for parasites, but for even gravel from the road. Depending on where you live, you may or may not have foxtails, but you may have some kind of burrs. Anytime you take your pet for a hike, really check him all over, because you don't want these things attaching. They can actually make a puncture wound that can turn into an abscess, a pocket of pus or bacteria underneath the skin that really, then requires veterinary care. Again, I don't think you can see on the right there, but I have a picture of a flea. And all I want to tell you is fleas are a big deal, especially to me. Some pets and people actually have what's called flea allergy dermatitis. They can be bitten by one of these insects, and 2 weeks later, they are still scratching from it. Fleas have a certain anticoagulant in their saliva because they're trying to take a blood meal from your pet. So they don't want the blood to clot. And some of the other enzymes in that material and all can be very irritating to pets and people. So, you may think your pet is flea free. It may be a dog that rarely goes out, but fleas can come in on our clothing. They can jump the threshold. If you're even looking him over and you don't see a flea, I caution you to do a test. Just get a plain old paper towel and dampen it. Then get out your flea comb, the one with the really tight teeth, and brush your doggy down from the neck all the way down the spine, but particularly right here at the base of the tail. Then clean that comb out on that damp white paper towel. If what you combed out just sits there, well, you've combed out a bunch of dirt, dander, and hair. But if that paper towel starts to turn a little pinkish brown, you have cleaned out, forgive me, flea poop, dehydrated blood from your pet. So whether or not you're seeing that pet, the fleas on that pet, they were there at one time and they're still bothering your scratching dog. So talk to your veterinarian. When we get into spring and then summer, depending on where you live, obviously it's worse in some cases than in other, and none of us want to put chemicals on our pets. However, in the case of ticks, there are 800 different species carrying about 150 different types of disease, and some of which can be fatal. So you have to balance out with your veterinarian, chemical versus fatal disease. And most of the times when there's problems with these preventives, it's been human error. We've used the wrong one or in the wrong amounts, or we didn't catch an irritation early. So anytime you use something, keep coming back, checking your pet, make sure he's okay. Make sure you never use, for a little dog what's been prescribed for a big. If you have 2 little dogs in the house, don't buy the one for the 85-pound dog and split it in 2. Get what's, specific for your pet and use it appropriately. As we continue, we're going to go down the chest. We want to be able to feel those ribs, and we want to make sure there's no bumps or lumps or hard spots. Over the years of teaching pet first aid, I've had several people go home after a class and found little, like they told me, marbles in the abdomen of their female dog. I obviously suggested please have them checked out by a vet, and they were the start of mammary cancer, but fortunately, they found them when they were a marble and not a golf ball or a fist size. Do know male dogs can also get mammary cancer. So it's something, to talk to your veterinarian about if a spay is a good idea in a senior age or not, or if there's other ways to monitor that. Another big concern, though, besides the hard spots in female dogs that haven't been spayed these days, is pyometra. Pyometra is an infection of the uterus where it basically fills with pus and implodes upon itself and becomes a life-threatening surgery. So, all of these things, the more you know, the more you can do to help your pet. We've already taught you how to check respiration, so just note if your pet's respiration is smooth and unlabored. And can you feel those ribs? You don't necessarily want to see them, but can you feel them? Continue down the hind legs like you did on the front, going all the way down and watching that face, checking the pads of the feet between the toes, and don't forget the hindquarters. But before I get to that, I realize I almost forgot the privates. That's so important. If our pets are seniors and they're arthritic, they may not be able to bend and get back there and take care of business like they used to. If our pets are overweight, that may be a problem too. So if they can't clean themselves, you need to get out that warm, not cold washcloth at night and just clean them so that they don't get infections. Really, really important. Make sure, when they go to the groomer, if they're a fluffy dog, that there's a nice clear exit, for them to go to the bathroom. And pay attention to those anal glands. If your pet's doing that little butt scoop boogie along the carpet, he may have impacted anal glands. My favorite go-to is to feed pumpkin puree, 1 tablespoon for a small, 3 for a large, and see if that helps when they go to the bathroom to release those anal glands. Another thing you might do is feed shredded raw carrot, which also helps express those glands. But I do know some dogs have chronic problems that need to be dealt with at the vet. And then, like I said, last but not least, the wag over here. Remember the tail, whether it's a nub, whether it's long and fluffy, fuzzy, or whatever it happens to be, It's an extension of the spinal cord, and it has a blood supply and nerve endings. All of our little wiggle butts, always wagging, get sometimes what's called happy tail because they bang it against walls and chair legs, and they get sores that sometimes are very difficult to heal. But anything can happen to a tail. Another animal could bite on it. It could get caught in a door. There could be, a lump or a bump or some kind of prick. So really get to know your dog from head to tail, because the more you know what's normal for him, the more quickly you can determine when something isn't quite right. When you're done, finish up with something fun. It's really all about, making time with your best friend and bonding. So brush them. Brushing can be wonderful for senior dogs because it helps move all of the oils through the coat. Just make sure you find a brush that isn't too sharp, that's going to tear their more gentle skin. Give them a good treat and spend quality time together so that they'll want to do this head to tail again and again and again. Also, every once in a while, put on a new pair of eyeballs, so to speak, and pay attention to your pet's eating and drinking habits. You're generally the one, dishing out their food for them, but are they eating more or less? That's an important note because it can indicate health. Obviously, an animal that's drinking more, we hope, is urinating more, or there's definitely a blockage. Notice what your dog looks like when he sits and stands. Sometimes their hindquarters start to sag as they lose control of the back parts of their body. They need some kind of little harness or something for a lift. Maybe the leg is cocked out to the side, which might let you know that hip dysplasia is going on. So paying attention to their body stance and posture is really important. But the more you notice anything that isn't quite right, it's going to let you know that something is abnormal, and you should get to your pet's second best friend, his veterinarian, to fix it and find it quickly. This is just a super quick list of problems you may encounter when doing a head to tail or any time in the course of the day with your pet. All of the ones written in black, it's all about us tuning in, because most of us have had something red, bleeding, our heart rate's been rapid, we've had an abnormal temperature. We know what those feel like. So we need to start paying attention and tuning into our pets. The two in blue, heavy panting and excessive licking, can be a problem in their own, but those are typically signs of pain in a pet, the way they exhibit pain. So if they're breathing heavy and they didn't just go for a walk and it's not a hot day, you should tune in and figure out what it might be. I guess it's kind of like the ladies giving natural childbirth, doing the pant to kind of alleviate the pain. Our pets do that as well. And excessive licking, it's their way of creating a massage. So the key, again, then, is red, is anything not normal for your pets could be abnormal and needs to be addressed by your veterinarian. I have these charts that kind of give you a rundown on how to do a head to tail checkup. And I also have a PDF of this chart where you can go ahead and record your pet's vitals, and on the pictures of the doggy, mark where there's a little lump or a bump, say it's the size of an eraser, put the date, come back and look at it in the next couple of days. If it's the size of a dime, it's growing quickly, we should get to the vet. You can just very quickly find them on my website. Here's the whole link to it. But if you just go to the website and look under products and classes, and then I have free resources, there are all kinds of PDFs you can download. So I love this quote, and I think it really applies to our senior dogs. Do the best you can until you know better, then do better. And now you guys all do know better. So I really hope you're going to dive in slowly and go at a pace that's comfortable for your senior pet. Thanks for listening today. And thank you for being a friend of Gray Muzzle. I'm going to stop my share and I'll see what questions we might have.
Thank you so much for that, Denise. That was just such a great presentation. So much information that's so important to keeping our best friends healthy and happy. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Oh, my pleasure. You know, Lisa, I'm all about senior dogs, but I love all animals, and what they bless our lives. They really, really do. And whatever we can do to make them more comfortable, we have to be advocates for them because they don't speak up. So it's really about us learning to speak their language and tuning into them.
Right. Perfectly well said. Amanda, I know you've been looking at questions. Are there any questions that we want to throw out to Denise in the last couple of minutes that we have with her?
There are a lot of questions about teeth brushing and the proper way to brush. And somebody wanted to know if you could share the name of that chew you found that Kiko likes, because their dog is picky as well.
What I'll tell you to do, because I don't want to say anything on behalf of Gray Muzzle, but go to my website at Safety Crusader. I've got it in my blogs. You can find it there, or just email me personally, petsafetycrusader@gmail.com. The proper way of brushing, though, I mean, again, it's one of those things where you have to get in a comfortable position with your pet. But I really think, like I said, you don't even have to have their mouth open. You lift the lip, and you're going to start in the back and in the little circles, go all the way around to the front, do the other side, and then pull down that lower lip and do the same. You know, some pets, if they like the toothpaste, may actually start to chew a little bit on the bristles to get more of the flavor. But there are different brushes out there now. I'm not going to share the name of it here. I was thinking I had one, but I think I dropped it on the floor. But they do like encase the tooth. They have bristles on all three sides. So that might be easier for you to just kind of put under the tooth and brush that way. But I'm always happy to answer, you know, if somebody wants to send me an email, I'm happy to be more specific.
Great.
Somebody wanted to know, Sarah wants to know, is there a way to check blood pressure at home?
There really isn't. What we do in, you know, the first aid world is to do the checking the pulse. I know that's not the same, but unless you have some kind of monitor that's been provided by your veterinarian, it's not something we can do. I wouldn't try a human one. Most pets' legs would be too small for them, and because of the fur, I don't think you're going to make good contact. You know, even when we go to the doctor's office, they often make us pull up a sleeve or something to make that contact. So it should be something your veterinarian shows you.
Deb said, for my senior dog's dry nose, I use a touch on the tip of Burt's Bees lavender lip balm, which her dogs seem to like. Is that something you would recommend, or what would you recommend for, I guess, skin?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. And I'm glad she mentioned that, because I would also say, you know, especially with senior dogs, sometimes you're going to need to put a little bit on their paws too, because they do get dry and cracked. The only thing you want to be careful of is just carefully read the ingredients. I know of Burt's Bee balms. I haven't read the ingredients lately, but you just, the lavender is generally okay for most dogs. It's probably waxy. So it keeps the moisture in. So as long as you're comfortable with the ingredients, or if you want to send anything my way, not that I'm an expert on this, I would really tell you to check with your veterinarian. But there are pet specific, both for the nose and for the paws, but do get pet specific things in the case, unless you know it's something really natural, because realize when it's on their nose too, hopefully they're gonna absorb it. But what's down here that always goes over the nose? It's the tongue. So they're going to end up ingesting that, as well as what's on the pads of the feet. There's some concern in that world about coconut oil, but really when you get down to the meat of reading it, they're concerned more about large amounts of it. So that's something I often think is safe too, to use on the skin and different parts of the body. Obviously getting the more organic the best, and you don't want to give them gobs and gobs of oil, but again, to treat skin issues, nose, paws, that's a good thing.
All right, I think we have time maybe for one last question. Amanda, do you have any good ones that we can throw Denise's way?
There's a few that are more specific, but how about, are there any easy stretches we can use for our senior dogs?
Stretches or stretchers? I wasn't sure what you were saying.
Stretches.
Stretches. Well, what you want to always do is make sure, and I know my friend here isn't going to be super cooperative, but as far as stretching, you always want to go in the direction of the joint. Be very careful about hyperextending and not taking it in the wrong way. You could do gentle circles even. But what I really would rather probably have you do, unless you were trained in this, and massage is a good thing that often does stretching as well, is do some simple things with your dog at home that he's kind of doing. Actually try to make your dog walk backwards. That really works well on developing core muscles for him. And just like for us, the core is really prime. And if that's strong, most of the rest of the dog is strong too. You can also take, and I don't have one here with me right now, but you can also take a towel folded the long ways and put it under the lower abdomen. Be very careful if this is a male doggy that you don't chafe, but you can gently pull, and that will kind of stretch on the back a little bit. But also, like I was showing you here, just gentle stretches this way of the leg are a good thing. And with a treat, make him look up, make him look down, make him look to each side to stretch the neck.
Great tips. Well, I think we are just about out of time, Denise, but thank you so much again for sharing your knowledge and your experience and your passion for helping animals and the people who love them. We truly appreciate you and all that you do.
My pleasure. And I'm, happy to entertain any of the questions if somebody wants to send them to you guys or send them my way. I'll do my best, but I am not a doctor. I've only played one on TV. No, I'm kidding. But, obviously your veterinarian is your best choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks again. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.